Hi guys, Tom here with my bud Ryan. No Shanae
Yeah.
for obvious reasons, not so obvious reasons. But look, we don't have a regular show this week, so we figured. I guess I figured Ryan and I would talk about our favorite thing to talk about. It seems these days, fighting games.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've got some. I've got a specific topic I want to talk to you about, Ryan.
Okay.
I want to talk about making fighting games better.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been playing a lot of old fighting games and a lot of new fighting games, just a lot of fighting games in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like in some ways they've improved tremendously, but in many ways I feel that they are very, very lacking. One of the few genres left from the arcades that is just lacking in significant ways. So I want to talk. I have a few different things that I want to go into, and I'm sure you probably have a thing or two that you'd like to go into
Mm-hmm.
to how we can improve this genre going forward,
Yeah.
and why you think it is that some of these things have yet to be implemented.
Okay.
So, you want to start off, or would you like me to?
I like it when you kickstart it, Tom.
Okay, so I think you know most of what I have are for more beginner players, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a couple of things that are obvious things, right? Things that people already complain about. Rollback netcode being in very few fighting games.
Yeah.
Rollback netcode is not a new thing, We've had rollback for 8 years, maybe
Yeah.
more than that. Um, I believe it started with the GGPO guys, but I could be wrong about that. But like, this is something that was, in a lot of last gen games.
Yeah. What's crazy to me is the fact that like, in order for Street Fighter to get it, someone who doesn't work at Capcom had to figure out a way to mod it in there.
Well, sure, and Street Fighter's rollback is broken.
Yeah.
It does not work properly, uh, which is wild to me. When shit, I think them's fighting herds
Yeah.
rollback works.
Yeah.
You know,
Skullgirls.
for sure, the more recent update to the Last Blade 2 works perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, but Street Fighter 5 can't
A
seem to get
20
on with this.
that is a 22-year-old game, by the way.
Right. And this isn't a Street Fighter 5 problem. This
Yeah.
is a most
Yeah.
of fighting games problem, right? Like more of them seem to be using delay-based netcode than rollback netcode. Uh, and that just, I don't know, that's just weird to me. Um, Arc Systems Works will be using rollback in Strive,
Which
which
is
will
great.
be, to my knowledge, their first game that they're doing that in.
Yeah. And it
Uh,
sucks because we talked about how playing Xrd Revelator 2 um was like it was like you have to know where to go or like know a Discord or join Japanese lobbies or what have you to find a game. And
right.
I can't help but think that like is it not is the player base not there here in the States because of that?
I don't think it helps. I don't think it's the
Not
only
specific.
reason,
Yeah, not
but
specifically because of that, but like I think that
right.
like when you're talking about a highly competitive fighting game, which that is very technical and has a lot of like so much shit relies on your timing, and for you not and to have like a suboptimal infrastructure behind your online play, it's just like it's a turnoff.
Yeah.
You know?
And when delay-based netcode is working, and there's a good connection between players, I don't really notice much of a difference.
Right.
I'm just not as keen to that stuff as a lot of other guys are. But this is something the community has complained about for years now.
Yeah.
So, that's not exactly what I wanted to touch on, but I think that's a good thing to bring up, right? It's a very common complaint with these games, and something that seems to be easy to fix.
Yeah.
You know, if it can be, like you said, implemented into an over 20-year-old game, could it not be implemented into Street Fighter, which it has been, just poorly so, you
Sure.
know?
Uh,
Um,
I did actually have one that I wanted to bring up, and it's one that
yeah,
I've been thinking about it for a while. Um, I think at this point, every fighting, like I don't, I'm not gonna expect every fighting game, right? But like fighting games that are coming from like the major publishers and major developers, I really think that they should all have a tournament mode built into them. Uh,
I agree. I
like
agree.
especially like you see it, you see how it works with Tekken 7, and it's just like the ability to like just jump into a tournament anytime. Um, it's just like it's awesome, you know. That's an awesome, it's an awesome experience to be able to have. And I look
It's a
at,
lot of fun.
yeah, and I look at, you know, I look at different like different streamers who play other fighting games. Like I just watched a Mortal Kombat 11 tournament the other night, and the whole thing was just like, well, let me set up a King of the Hill tournament or a King of the Hill room, and then all right, now you got to back out. Okay, now you come in. Let me set an
Right,
invite,
right,
and it's
right.
just, it's like a whole, and like just slows the whole thing down. And
And we're seeing a lot more of that right now.
yeah, and yeah, especially right now, and like it would be like one of the reasons why one of the reasons I miss out on watching like the majors is like it's just a streamlined experience, right? Like I'm going from one fight to the next. There's very little downtime. Like there's some time for like the commentators to talk about what just happened and talk about who's coming
Right,
up.
button check and all that,
Yeah,
yeah.
but like we're not waiting for people to like check their invites and get into the room and make sure people are backing out and stuff. And
Right.
like I think about like with everything that Mortal Kombat 11 did right, it just, and with how much that game is focused on the competitive scene and how much they integrate the very existence of tournaments into that game, the very existence of real life tournaments into that game.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me. It's an amazing oversight to me.
And
Um,
Street Fighter does the same thing, right?
yeah, yeah, and
You know
like
what's interesting? You and I have discussed this one before. I can't remember if it was either Turbo or Super on the SNES had a built-in tournament mode.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and yeah, it
yeah.
was a local thing. It was local because there was no
Like
online
what are you gonna
functionality
do?
with those games. But like,
But if you're
you
setting up
know,
like a little, if you're setting up like a little
right?
local little tournament, like that shit's built in, and like just
Yeah,
people handing controllers off, and like even games like Virtual Fighter was doing it, like older Virtual Fighter games were doing it, and it was just like, and for me, like since I always played those games by myself, it was just a way for me to like play a lot of that game without any interruption. But like
right.
it was just, it's the idea behind it is cool, right? And the way that you could like the tool, like a very basic tool that you could use to set up your own, to have your own tournament anytime, is just, it's understated and like really underused, especially with how with how much people seem to be paying a little bit more attention to these tournaments these days. It seems like it would make sense, uh,
Yeah.
but you know,
Uh, the next one is another one that you and I have touched on. Is online training.
yeah, yeah,
Now, I won't say that certain games don't have it. Like, I don't know if Mortal Kombat has it.
does not,
Uh, I'm not sure if Tekken has it or not.
not sure,
I know Street Fighter V does not. You know,
yeah,
uh, and the last game that I can think of that I know for sure has an online training mode is Street Fighter 4.
yeah.
So it seems to me that we're taking a step backwards by removing that in Street Fighter V, or just not including it at all in a lot of these other games.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's a weird thing. I think a lot of more competitive guys might not see the appeal of it, you know. But at the same, I guess I can't even say that. You know, I imagine some high level players would like it too. Um,
You know, I
you
think,
know, it's nice being able to train with your friends for one, right?
yeah,
But even without that, like, it's nice training in the environment in which you are going to play,
yeah,
right? Like, if
yeah,
you're training in offline training mode, and then jump into an online fighting game, your experience is going to be different.
Sure.
Especially if there's no rollback netcode,
Yeah.
Uh, so I think online training would be really good. And there's been times where you and I have been playing, and you want to try something, or I want to try something, and we just have to do it in an actual match,
Yeah. Yeah.
with a timer, right?
Yeah. And I think that, like, to their credit, I think fighting games, uh, I think more modern fighting games have put more of an emphasis on giving you what you need to learn the basics of those games, and giving you, more tools to figure out, like, even for like newcomers, to like figure out like basic concepts, like, like safe and unsafe, and figuring out frame advantage and all that shit. I think that modern fighting games are doing more to give you that. But, like, again, even fighting like an AI dummy does not compare to fighting another human controlled opponent. It just
Right.
doesn't. And I think being able to do that, like, without having to worry about a time limit, or worrying about rounds or anything, just going until, like, you guys get tired of doing it. Like, I think that there's a lot of value in that, and I think that would make it more conducive to helping, like, with muscle memory, um, and like really getting down those matchups in a way that's not where you're like just getting beat by this opponent and just waiting for that opponent to show up again.
Yeah.
Um, that's another thing for me too, is because, like, I think that, like, I have friends who main certain characters, but I don't get to play with them as often as I like. But there are also characters that I don't see online very often,
Right. Right.
so, like,
Right.
I don't really get to practice that matchup as much as I want
Learning
to.
that matchup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think
Well,
that would be really helpful.
I think, like, going off of that, you just said that you think a lot of modern fighting games are doing a lot more to help new players. And while I do agree, like, without a doubt, they are doing a lot more than they were 10 years ago,
Yeah.
20 years ago, right? I don't think that they're doing enough. And I think part of that is because of the origins of fighting games, right? Being an arcade thing, coming from a time when there were no tutorials even at home, right?
Right.
Mario didn't give you a tutorial, right? Like, none of these games did.
Yeah.
Uh, I think a lot more could be done for newer players, and I think in doing that, they would not only increase the player base, but the longevity of a game's lifespan.
Right.
Uh, so I've got two things here. One, you and I have spoken about before. I think a lot about the World Tour mode in Street Fighter Alpha 3. So, for those that don't know, World Tour mode in Street Fighter Alpha 3 is kind of like a fighting game RPG, right? In that you fly around the world and you have these matches, and by winning the matches, you level up your character and can grant certain traits to your character. Like, for instance, like the no dizzy, right? Like, you can't be dizzied, things like
Yeah.
that. Auto air block, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Things that are not realistic for, like, in an actual match,
Sure.
but for a single player game mode, it's fun to do.
Yeah.
But I think where World Tour mode really excels, that you don't really hear many people talking about, is that World Tour mode puts you in very specific types of matches that will teach a new character or a new player new things, things that might seem foreign, uh, that a training mode with a command list won't do.
Right.
It'll be like, I don't know, you can't block in this match, right?
Yeah.
Or the opponent's at 50% health, but you can only beat them with supers, things like that, which will really drill into your head that, hey, this is how a super is done. This is when a block is, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think things like that, while they could be expensive, right? I don't think they have to be. World Tour mode was literally just a map and matches. That's
Sure.
all it was.
Yeah. Like, they didn't change like the core gameplay.
Right. And I think that could be very useful. Even things like Seikyo Dojo, which was a different Alpha 3 mode that was only in certain versions of the game. It's like you pick an extremely weak character, right? I mean, it's whatever character you want, but like they are weakened, right? And you fight two very strong characters at the same time,
Right.
you know? It's kind of like the whole dramatic battle thing. And I think that's good because if you can get good fighting two characters with a weak ass character, you're gonna learn some good habits pretty fast.
Sure.
And I think things like that, little challenge modes like that, could help improve fighting games across the board. Could help help new players have just have more single player content, which I think is important in these games. And one of the things that I think that NetherRealms actually does quite well, and two, actually teach them some things.
Yeah.
I realized I just said A and two, but you know what I mean.
Sure. A2M.
But yeah, the next thing is probably my favorite, and I actually heard this from a YouTuber who goes by Nihongo Gamer, who I've been following for a while. So he's talking about, if you're playing Call of Duty, right? Online. I'm talking about online. You're playing Call of Duty, Overwatch, or you're playing, what always pops into my head is Killing Floor 2, right? And the match ends. And whether you win that match or lose that match, those games say, hey, you got the most headshots.
Yeah.
Or, hey, you got this many assists. Or whatever, right? If fighting games could do that, I think, one, it would retain players because they wouldn't feel so shitty for losing all the time.
Yeah.
And two, I think it would help even high-level players, right? Because let's say you win 9 times out of 10, but you realize that you've got shitty anti-airs.
Yeah.
And this thing just tells you, hey, this match, you hit 10 anti-airs.
Yeah.
And if you don't see that little accolade appear, hey, I didn't do enough anti-airs that round.
Right.
I'm going to try to do more this round. And I can't imagine something like that's expensive to do.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I've never made a game, but I can't imagine it being that expensive. I can think of many games that have on-the-fly stat tracking like that.
Yeah.
I think that I would love that, man. Put that in every fucking fighting game.
Yeah,
and I can't think of one that does it.
I think that one thing that because when I talk to people about fighting games, the feeling that I get is that, and this is something that I found seems to be unique to fighting games. I feel like people have this mindset specifically about fighting games, and I think that people are they're intimidated by them because of being new. They're likely to lose, which goes for any competitive game, right? If you're new at Call of Duty, you're gonna get killed a lot in Call of Duty, right?
Right.
But I think that there's something specific about fighting games. I think a lot of it has to do with the one-on-one nature of fighting games, and probably the more complex inputs of fighting games as compared to other kinds of video games. But I think that when people they get into a fighting game and they lose and they can't nail these moves, then it's discouraging for them. And being able to be told hey, this is what you're doing right. Hey, look, your footsies were on point this match.
Right. You blocked X amount of times, right?
Yeah.
You got 3 V reversals, whatever it might be.
This is how many of your hits landed, right? And,
right.
And so I think, and it's funny because there is some crosstalk there with other kinds of fighting games. Take your Fight Night, for example, right? Fight Night is going to keep, just like in real boxing, they're going to keep track of what percentage of your punches landed and how many of these kinds of punches did you throw and things like that. And I think that could definitely translate to, these fictional fighting games, right? And keeping track of that stuff, because I think the big thing that I've seen in video games, especially in the wake of the first Modern Warfare game, is people love tracking their progression.
Right.
And having a real tangible an applicable way to track your progression in a fighting game. Because I feel like a lot of your progress in a fighting game is you have to keep track of that on your own, and you have to be mindful of it. And it's abstract in a way that you're not always aware of. And
Hmm.
I think that for a lot of people, having some numbers and some actual data to back up like what they're doing in the games are going to be it would be really helpful.
I mean, I think even for me, it would be helpful. I think for even some very much higher level players than us, it would be helpful, right? Like
Yeah.
it. I mean, even if whatever the next Guilty Gear says, "Hey, you did one cross up this match,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Man, I really want to work on my cross ups." So I work on it, and the next match it says, "Hey, you did three cross ups this match."
Yeah.
You know, you still lost, but hey, you did this. You
Yeah.
know, like that by itself can be rewarding, even without a leveling up system or a
Right.
loot box system or without any of that stuff, right?
Right.
Like that on its own can be rewarding. And it's just funny to me that like so many genres do that, but
Yeah.
like in a lot of ways, fighting games seem like just stuck, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think because I the mindset I think with fighting games is like you either won that fight or you lost it, and well, from like a mechanics point, right? Like for as far as the
right?
game is concerned, you either won that fight or you lost that fight, and I think that yeah, there are definitely people like us who think about like, all right, well, I won the fight, but like, I didn't like how I won the fight, or like I wanted a more decisive fight than what I had, and like my inputs were sloppy, but and so like so I think that that binary reasoning with a lot of fighting games can make it so that it's harder to want to come back to them if you're not that invested in them initially.
Right.
Um, but I think so. That's why I think that like because we talked about like many times about how well Mortal Kombat 11 sold, and that's people buying Mortal Kombat 11 who don't even really buy fighting games,
Yep.
or and if they bought fighting games, they probably didn't really buy Mortal Kombat games before this. So like I think about how much more meaningful that purchase could have been to somebody who like they wanted to play the game, they want to be good at it, but they don't know how,
Hmm.
and they don't know how what to improve on. And so yeah, I think having those kind of metrics in place would really help. So
The last thing I have is just the price point entry, right? Like,
yeah,
and I think that's lessened by the fact that a lot of modern fighting games are built with console in mind,
yeah,
right? Mortal Kombat 11 being a prime example of that, but you could even point to Street Fighter 5, right? Street Fighter 5 saw a console release years before it saw an arcade release, right?
right,
What I'm getting at here is legacy controls, and some of these games allow you to use them, some of them don't, and that's up to the publisher, up to the developer. But if you are a player who prefers a stick, right, and you want to play the next whatever big fighting game title out there, not only are you spending $60 on the game, and then whatever seasons that game might have, and whatever skins or fucking commentator packs or
yeah,
whatever else is out there. But on top of that, now you got to go buy a fight stick, and if you want even a decent one of those, you're going to spend $100.
right,
When we've had the capability, all fighting games have had the capability to allow for legacy controls,
yeah,
and not a lot of them do it.
yeah,
You know, and I get it to some extent. I get it, right? Like, let's say you're Capcom and you've just licensed this new fight stick from Evo, right? And they're gonna put a picture of Ryu on there, and they're gonna sell this thing for $200,
right,
and you're gonna get your cut out of it, right? Well, it to not implement legacy controls because then you could sell more of this new fight stick and get your cut.
right,
What I don't get is Capcom allows for legacy controls. There's a lot of smaller games that do not. And I don't think it's a cost thing because the guys who invented this are the Skullgirls team, and they're licensing it out for free.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. I feel like you're maybe not excluding a huge audience by doing that, right?
Yeah.
But like,
well,
controllers ain't cheap.
Yeah.
Games ain't cheap. Consoles ain't cheap.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we've talked about, like, not even just fighting games, but, like, all video games, right? Like, let people play your game how they want to play it. You know, like, let them map the buttons in the way that they want to map them. Like,
right.
It hurts.
And there are instances in which I don't agree with that, but very seldomly.
Yeah. It just, like, it hurts no
one. I think, like, Overwatch, controller versus mouse and keyboard, no. Don't let that happen.
Well, no, but, like, if we're talking
Separate those lobbies or something, you know?
No, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, you know, when we're talking about how it's mapped, like, we're talking about two people who are using the exact same input, but they want to map it differently, then just fucking let them, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that developers get weirdly precious about how people play their games, and like I've always wondered.
But they're okay with you playing it that same way as long as you pony up the cash. You know?
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, you're playing it some fucking you're going out and buying a hitbox, right? There is no PS4 licensed hitbox.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's you're buying the same fucking stick.
Yeah.
Only this one's for PlayStation 4. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird.
What I've something I've been thinking about is, like, I would like it for fighting. I would like it for developers and publishers of fighting games to make more meaningful choices with your rosters. And I guess what I mean by that is that, like, not everybody, but so many, like, their goal is, like, to bolster their roster, like, you know, get it as big as they feel like they can get it. And I think that, like, that means, and like that, like, the larger the roster gets, the smaller the pool of characters that is appealing or even actually good gets smaller.
Right.
And, like, and I think that, like, a lot of it is around, like, for me anyway, a lot of it is around, like, when developers see fit to include characters from other franchises in their game, for and I'm always like, what is the point of that? Like it, like,
marketing.
Like, on paper,
you know?
Like, on paper it seems cool, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, you know, most recent example for me is, you know, Terminator and Mortal Kombat 11, right? Like, on paper that was cool, and, like, I don't think that Terminator's, like, necessarily a bad character, but, like, at the same time, like, I just feel like his presence is just, I don't feel like it's, like, I don't feel like he's a meaningful decision for that franchise, especially when you have, like, other Mortal Kombat characters that you left out that you could have put in instead.
Right.
And, you know, and things like, or like Tekken 7 with, like, you know, I guess. And, like,
it all comes down to Negan.
And, like, Negan is, like, I feel like he's an egregious example, but, like, it's the same time.
But it's so smart, man. It's smart.
It's smart because, like, there are a lot of people who fucking watch that show, which also explains, like, and I used to talk about, like, why do they use Jeffrey Dean Morgan's likeness? But, like, I know why. Because they want to play, like...
Let me tell you something. I bought Soul Calibur 6 because of 2B's inclusion.
Right.
I like Soul Calibur, but I bought it because 2B was there, right? I know for a fact that I'm not the only Nier Automata fan that bought that game for that reason, because I have talked to many of them.
Well, no, and I think that, now, like, I take less...
Now, wait. Now, Negan from The Walking Dead and hands down more well-known, more popular than fucking 2B.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Man, That's so smart of them. I get where you're coming from with it. I do. But at the same time, I would be lying if I said I wasn't hyped to see Ninja Turtles and Injustice, and
Yeah, and
you
so like, and
know,
I guess like I'm kind of a fucking hypocrite because like, you know that when I heard that Ninja Turtles is gonna be an Injustice, like I got really excited about it.
yeah.
But like,
Well, I even remember you talking about how Mario come into Soul Calibur.
yeah, and my, I think that like, I don't think I inherently take issue with characters from like outside of video games or in different franchises coming to these games. I just think that like it's just so. I think it like it takes me out of it. It takes me like it's just such a weird fucking amalgamation of these fucking characters, like just throwing pop culture in there for the sake of it, and it's like, and I
I
feel
agree. Like, I think there's sometimes where it's much more suitable,
yeah.
right? Like seeing, I don't know if he was the first one or not. It was either him or Noctis, but seeing the Geese trailer for Tekken the first time was awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's a little bit weird. When you see Spawn come out in Mortal Kombat, I'm like, all
Like
right,
Spawn's not
whatever.
even the weirdest of
You
it.
know,
Now they got fucking RoboCop, and like,
yeah.
it's just like,
I actually want to see that though. I want to
look,
play that.
I love RoboCop. Like, I have always loved RoboCop. I love Terminator for that matter. But like,
You love Negan.
I love Negan. uh, but like, I think that like there is definitely like, I think that there are definitely games for those characters.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there are games. I think that there is a fighting game for those characters to inhabit. I just don't think that for the most part, that's the game that they got put in.
Sure.
Uh, and because I do think that I honestly, I genuinely believe that there's a fighting game that I would like to see Negan in, or I wouldn't mind seeing Negan in. I haven't played it, but that game certainly exists. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just
Well, Street Fighter.
it's actually a Street Fighter version of Negan wouldn't be half bad. um, but yeah, and but I also think that like even without that stuff, I think that there are definitely instances where they're trying, because like, for example, a few of my friends and I were talking about them fighting herds recently,
Yeah.
and I think one of my friends like had mentioned something about the console version of the game, and
Does that exist?
I don't think it's out yet, but it's been announced. Uh,
Huh.
and what did I say? I was like, oh, because I remember like, now that I think the game's 1.0 now,
It
and
is. Yeah.
I was just like, I think that one of the hopes I had was like for maybe one or two more characters, but like at the same time, I also felt like the roster that they do have, like, is like they're built pretty solid.
Right.
Um, and then like I remember my friend making a remark about how like, well, I mean, you need like at least 20 characters to have like a beefy roster, and I was like, that's not
Yeah.
even. But at the same time, like, I don't think that like that's what every fighting game needs. I don't feel like every fighting game needs 20 characters. I think you know if
I mean,
you
Street Fighter Five started with fewer than that.
yeah, and
Far fewer.
like give me like, if you're gonna give me a fighting game with like 6 or 7 characters, then give me a fighting game with 6 or 7 like well built characters,
Yeah.
and that's fine. My problem is, I think, um, where I have a lot of characters, and some of them are good, and some of them are too good, and some of them are just garbage.
That's
Um,
Marvel too, right?
yeah,
Like you got damn near 50 characters. I think it's like 45 or 46, something like that, right?
yeah,
And you're right. Like half of that cast, you probably aren't going to touch. You know,
yeah,
no one's playing his role, and
yeah,
yeah, then you've got your fucking Cables and Sentinels that are just going to be everyone's mains, right?
right,
But I don't know, man. I think roster is a hard thing. It's a hard thing. There was part of me before and you might recall, I used to say that like a small roster is what I preferred, you
Yeah.
know, because it makes balancing easier. And then I heard an argument against balancing, and I really do tend to agree with it in that, you know, a lot of people consider Street Fighter 1 to be the most balanced fighting game, right? Because you've got Ken and Ryu, and they are exactly the same,
Right.
right? But then, like, there's another part of me that's like, Marvel isn't broken because you can pick the exact options that I pick.
Yeah.
It's on you that you decided to go with those other characters.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know. It's
Well, I think that the
up for
argument is more
debate,
like I don't want to have to pick that character to
right.
be able to compete against you.
Sure, and I get that.
Because I think that in fighting games where like the character that you vibe with isn't necessarily always going to be the character that you're actually good with.
Right.
I think that when you're already faced with like dealing with that, and then you narrow that down even more to like, well, if I want to beat Tom as fucking Spider-Man, then I got to pick Spider-Man too because like that's the only character that can beat Spider-Man. Uh, and and so I think that like having
But that's why people have pockets, right? Like people have like, hey, I got a pocket Balrog only
yeah
if I fight this other character, right? Like
yeah
that's been a thing since
well no
before we.
but if mechanically and objectively speaking the only character that like is can be competitive against this character is this guy,
Right.
then it sucks to have to narrow it down like that.
Sure. Sure.
But at the same time, then you have to make the decision like maybe just don't like because I've said before like if a video game's not fun, then I'm not playing it. like
I don't think like. I think in most fighting games, anybody on the roster can beat anybody else on the roster.
sure
Not always,
yeah
but like 95% of the time, right?
yeah
And like you might have to work a lot harder to do that,
yeah
you know, but it's attainable, right? Like we talk about Marvel and like fucking CVS and I mean shit, Street Fighter 2, right? People are still finding new tech for those games now,
yeah
you know. Which is why I think part of the reason why I think tier lists are bogus, right? Especially because tier lists typically go up early in a fighting game's life.
yeah
Makes no sense to me.
yeah
But yeah, I do see what you're saying, and I do agree with you for the most part that I do wish guest characters fit the property that they're being shoehorned into a bit better.
sure
Uh,
yeah because
but
I
you
think
know,
I think that
depending on the property, right?
yeah because
Like
I don't know like
you put anybody you want in Smash Brothers, doesn't really matter at this
yeah
point, you know. But
yeah but like when we're talking about like I don't know like I like because I think that Smash Brothers is a game that's going less for a focused vibe than like a Mortal Kombat is or like a Street Fighter is, but another thing that I wanted to bring up is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and that is like with like queuing up online, like just give me the option to say that I don't want to play against someone on Wi-Fi. Like just let me not do that.
oh, that's a really good one.
Uh,
Well, I mean, most of them let you pick from connection, right? If you're just getting thrown
yeah,
into a match, it's because you're choosing to quick start a match.
but at the same time, like the connection quality meter is a fucking lie, and like
It's not. It's not. I mean,
it's-
you're right in that sometimes those connections drop drastically, and the connection you get is not the connection you were led to believe you were going to get. But I think more often than not, in most games, they're pretty accurate, right?
or like at the very least, let's say I'm not doing quick match, right? And let's say you're not giving me the option to filter out people on Wi-Fi. Okay.
Yeah.
Then at the very least, tell me if that person's on Wi-Fi or not, and I will make a decision as to whether or not I will fight them.
Yeah.
And if not, then I'm going back into the queue.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of getting thrown into a match, and because like I could get matched up with someone on Wi-Fi, and I see all five of those bars filled up, and by the time the match fucking starts, we're down to two, and I have no way
Right.
of knowing until like I start playing the match, right? And so I want to be able to actually have a say in you know who I'm fighting against, like in terms of like the quality of the match, the quality of the connectivity of the match. Um, because I'll play. Oh, if I'm queuing up in Mortal Kombat, I see it on Wi-Fi. I'm going back in the queue every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and like and it sucks because like not every game gives you that information. And at the very least, I want that information.
Yeah.
But ideally, I want to be able to choose whether I'm matched with that person in the first place.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one for sure. Uh, you just reminded me of one that really bothered me a few months back with Tekken 7 was that I had a rage quitter after I
Oh
had
my
made my
god.
way
You fought
out
your
of
way out of
losers
losers.
to the grand finals and was about to win, right?
Oh
I
my
had
god.
rage quit that, and I have a screen cap of it to commemorate the moment. Uh, but, you know, I think games are not as strict as they should be on rage quitters, and I understand sometimes the internet goes out.
Yeah.
But like, dude, no. If you're getting rage quits, like it's most of the time it's people fucking rage quitting, okay?
Yeah.
And the people whose internet went out, well, I guess you're just gonna have to take the L on this one, right?
Yeah.
I think like if you rage quit, you should get the loss automatically, and the other person should get the win automatically.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's it's dude.
And no game does that. You know?
Yeah. Well, like even like people like that's like
you wouldn't have low tier gods.
I was just gonna fucking bring it up. Okay, so like
Yeah.
he's like because he'll do and like I know he's not the only one that does this, but he's the most well known person that probably does this, so I'm gonna call him out. Um, he'll be playing and because he's the kind of guy that like if you're not playing the game the way that he thinks you should be playing it, then that means you're trash and he's gonna leave. But like one thing I've heard him say is that when someone is about to beat him, he's like, I'm gonna fucking rage quit so that they don't even get the points.
Yep.
And
And
like,
that's the sad thing about Street Fighter V.
yeah,
People fake their way up the ranks. It's very easy to get yourself to gold by rage quitting.
yeah.
It's very easy to do. You know?
And it sucks because like, it's not easy getting up there like legitimately, and
Yep.
like people are really fucking good at that game, and so like gaining ground in that game when you're getting ground when you're at the level that we're at is just like it's a big fucking deal, and it sucks
Right.
because like I think that people like people who shouldn't even need to do that shit, or I guess nobody needs to do it, right? But you know what I mean, like people who are like who are good enough to not have to resort to something like that, who still do it, which is like
Yeah.
bizarre to me. And it's funny because that reminds me of like when Samurai Showdown 2019 like first came out. Like it was, I don't know, there was something going on with the code in that game where like every time a match ended, like legitimately ended, like one of us legitimately won. We saw a victory screen and everything.
Yeah.
I would be back at the in the lobby, and then the game would flash up a warning that says that like, hey, if you keep leaving matches,
Sure.
there's gonna be a penalty.
Right, and I'm sure that's just some weird bug, right?
Yeah.
But like,
Which
there
it
should
has
be a
since been
penalty.
resolved. Yeah.
There should be a penalty, and it should be on the very first time, and it should be consistent. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, like why give someone a second chance? They know what they did.
Yeah,
Right?
and if it was an accident, okay, accidents happen. It's not a huge deal if you lost one match due to an accident.
Right.
You know. But yeah, that's a big one for me. I feel like I would play. I feel like I'd be online a lot more if it wasn't for things like that.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, because I'm like I have, my patience for people who actively and intentionally do things that ruin everyone else's good time. Like my patience for that shit is just zero, and it just but it's like it's it's an inherent problem with online games of all kinds. But it sucks, because like I think that getting good at any video game takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of time, and working your way up the ranks in in a video game that has a ranked mode, it's it's not always the easiest thing in the world. And like when somebody kind of just takes that from you, or even in your case, you fought your way out of losers to get to the grand finals, and then just someone didn't like the way that shit was going, and then that means you don't get to have.
And
that
it was
time.
the guy that sent me to losers too.
Oh, he couldn't take it, and it's just it just sucks. Because just take the loss, man. Because I can 1,000% guarantee you that you rage quitting looks a lot worse than you losing.
Well, here's the funny thing too is I'm not even good at Tekken,
Yeah.
So I'm never gonna have that opportunity again. He took that from me.
Yeah. All in all, how long were you in that tournament, hours wise?
Oh, not less than an hour.
Okay.
Less than an hour,
Okay.
The Tekken 7 tournaments are short, but still annoying. But yeah, I guess the only other major one for me is auto combo.
Oh, yeah.
I have weird mixed feelings about auto combo.
Yeah, me too.
Part of me gets it. It's for new players, right? It's to help new players, but I don't think it helps new players.
It doesn't, because you don't learn anything that way.
You don't learn anything. A good player is always going to beat out that auto combo.
Yeah.
And I was driving today thinking about it, and I was like, I definitely could and probably am wrong, right? I probably am wrong about this, but I can't think of a fighting game with an auto combo system that doesn't already have chain combos or something similar. And it's you mean to tell me you can't move your finger from 1, 2, 3?
Just do that over and over again.
You can't do that. I don't know.
I think that if and that's another thing too, right?
I think it hurts new players more than it helps them.
Well, that's the thing too, right? Is because I can guarantee, I'm by no means saying that those games are easy, because they're not. But what I'm saying is that if you can't manage that, then I don't know, give up, because fighting games get a lot more difficult than that motion,
Yeah, they get a lot more difficult than counting to 3, right? And there are some games that I think can get a pass on that if it's intrinsically built into the fundamentals of how that game works.
Sure.
BB Tag is very much that way. It explains to you in the tutorials hey, this is auto combo. You need to learn to use this.
Right.
This is how this game is played,
Yeah.
But Marvel 3 has it.
Yeah.
Also got chain combos.
Yeah.
Under Night has it. It also has chain combos. Dragon Ball has it. Also has chain combos.
Yeah.
Come on,
Doesn't Under Night call you out when you're using auto combos? Or was that thinking of a different game?
It's Under Night or Marvel. I think maybe Under Night and Marvel.
Okay.
Will flag. You know how it will bring up hey, you did a counter, or you did a parry, or whatever. It'll bring up auto combo. You know, not being a dick about it, but yes, it does. It does call people out. But what does that even matter? You're playing against somebody you're never going to meet on the internet. At least in most situations, right?
Yeah.
You probably don't give a shit if you get called out for that.
Yeah.
And you're probably getting beat by the person who's not doing it anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think it helps anybody in the way that it has been implemented. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of those games I just named. Yeah. I just feel like you're hurting new players by doing that.
Yeah.
And that you should be doing other things like stat tracking, like other modes.
Yeah.
That would better assist those people.
And I think that they're doing it in a misguided, with a misguided logic. Well, if we make the flashy shit easier to pull off, then more people will come to the game. But the irony of it is you can't even do the most flashy shit with auto combo enabled. Uh,
Right.
and like
And
it makes it harder for you to win because like someone's gonna know that you're doing auto combo. Like, well, I know how to fucking deal with that.
well, and what's funny is it's not even an execution thing, right? Because if you think about these games that have it, like, yeah, some of them still have quarter circles. Okay, let's take Dragon Ball, right? One of
Yeah.
the most popular fighting games this generation. Uh, the most complicated motion in Dragon Ball is a single quarter circle.
Right.
That's it. And I get it. That can be difficult for some people. But okay, let's go to Battle for the Grid. The most complicated motion in that game is a direction and a button.
Right.
You know? Like, you can't learn that. I'm pretty sure you do that in every other game you play.
Yeah,
Know?
and I think that like it's so weird because that like you think about like the complex like shit that you have to do in games that aren't fighting games. Like I think like you think about like how like most every game that's not a fighting game has you manipulating two sticks in opposite or conflicting directions all the time while pressing
Right.
multiple other buttons at the same time. And that's while dealing with a bunch of other shit on the screen. You're not just worried about one guy on the screen, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, it's a fork, right? Like,
yeah,
you've used a fork forever. You have the muscle memory for a fork.
yeah.
And that's all these other games, right? Or at least the vast majority of them,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Whereas if you're new to a fighting game, all of a sudden it's chopsticks, right? Like
Yeah.
but I don't know, man. I mean, look, you and I, we talk a lot about these fighting games. We've been really into them this past year, and I love them. I love you. I just expect more from you. I think you
Uh,
could be better.
I think that like it's funny because like what I think, and this is something that I think about whenever I think of people doing less than what they could be, is just like you should want better for yourself, and you should want more for your franchise. You should want more for your audience.
Yeah,
And I think that like and don't get me wrong, I think that there are some games that like go too far in that direction of like trying to give the audience more and like giving the audience they definitely like, for example, I think there are a lot of people who are very good at there are a lot of people who are very very good at Guilty Gear. But Guilty Gear is a very complicated game, and Guilty Gear is a game that asks a lot of you. And I think it is good that, on one hand, I think that it's good that the game puts that kind of faith in you to like learn that shit. But I also think that it could be scaled back a bit. And from what you're telling me about Strive, that might be the case where
yeah.
like we could scale this back a bit. Like we could make this a complex and deep fighting game, but also don't put so much shit in there that like new people are afraid to learn, because like you overload yourself on that stuff.
You do, but in that game, in that specific game's defense, I will say that Xrd as well as Revelator probably give you the best resources to learn those things.
Sure.
More
Yeah.
more so than probably any fighting game.
Any fighting game, yeah.
You know, so and it's cool, right? It's cool to have like the one or two games that are like, man, those are some hardcore fucking games.
Yeah.
Like because even I mean, FPS has Counter Strike, and MOBA has whatever,
Yeah.
But
MOBA has MOBAs.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool to have that one, right?
Yeah.
Or one or two franchises.
But like I think
those are the fucking hard ass ones.
Well, yeah, but what I think is that the way that we think of games like Guilty Gear, or I guess a lot of those high tier anime fighters, I think the way that we think about those games
Yeah.
is the way that people who are casually getting into fighting games see all fighting games.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
And I think that if these other fighting games that weren't as hardcore as games like Blaze Blue or games like Guilty Gear, I think if they did a better job of representing themselves as games that can be more easily learned by people who are just getting into fighting games, I think that they would be doing themselves a great service, and in doing so, they would learn more the developers would probably learn more about how to serve those people without
Yeah.
without pandering to them in like weird ways like auto combos.
Yeah.
Um, and then in turn, people who are getting into fighting games can see and feel the satisfaction that comes with getting better at these games. Because I think about where I was a year and a half ago, and then I see where I am now with games like Street Fighter. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not winning any majors anytime soon, but um, I think I'm at the point where I feel confident in saying that I'm actually pretty good. And there's a satisfaction that comes with that. That
Yeah.
if that game had auto combos that I was leaning on and utilizing, I wouldn't be able to say that. I wouldn't be able to feel
Well,
confident in saying
right.
that.
I do think a lot of it falls on the player, right? And you saying this makes me think of the thing that I always think of is that, like, you saying that you do think you're getting good. The average person who plays a fighting game can't throw a fireball. You know, people don't seem to realize that. And the other thing that always interests me is that people look at players like, fucking Ricky Ortiz or Justin Wong or Sonic Fox or whoever,
Yeah.
and they're like, I want to do that. How come I can't do that? But nobody looks at a professional basketball player or a professional football player and says, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Dude, it's because they're fucking professionals. That's what they do.
Yeah, they get paid to do that 24 hours a day.
Nobody looks at it that way.
Yeah.
People are just so down on themselves for not being as good as fucking Daigo Umihara, and it's like...
Yeah, but like that's his fucking job, right?
It's unrealistic to think that you would be that, right?
And that's actually an understanding that that Kaylee gave me, where like, she would watch me play. She watches me play these games like all the time, and like sometimes I get down on myself about it. And she's like, I think you're pretty good. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm that good. And she was like, and I would catch, like, she would catch me comparing myself to like people who are worlds better than I am. And she was like,
right.
And she would be like, well, Ryan, if you didn't have to go to work and you could just stay at home playing Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat all day, then you'd be that good too. But you've got bills, so you can't do that.
Right.
And so
it's
like,
the whole fucking local musician complex, right? Like this huge fucking star. Well, I'm better than they are. It's like, well, okay, dude. It's a different ballpark, right? Like, I think it's more common. Like, it's more comparable to something like actual sports.
Right.
Nobody says, well, how come I can't fucking, I don't know, dunk from the free throw line or whatever. No one says that, right? But everyone is like, well, how come I can't do this fucking combo? Well, it's because this fucker spent 30 hours learning that combo, you know?
I think that mindset probably comes from people thinking of, commonly people think of video games as, less physically demanding than most sports, which, have to agree, but like at the same time, like I think that means that to a lot of people translates as also that should be easier for me to learn and be better at.
Right.
Which it's a different skill, and both of them take hundreds, thousands of hours of practice. But I think that mindset is probably also rooted in the viewpoint of video games. Like, well, these are toys, so how hard can it be to play with a toy?
Right.
So
so is a fucking basketball.
Sure.
So is a football.
Sure.
But I will say this: it's very interesting to me that it took this pandemic. We have the FTC on a large scale, right? The FTC as a whole, as this big fucking group of groups, right? Is very, very vocal, in sometimes less than nice ways to a lot of these publishers and developers about a lot of the changes they'd like to see made in these games. Some of these changes we just talked about, right? And a lot of these larger scale publishers and developers have proven time and time again that they care not. Right?
Yeah.
Whatever, you're buying the game.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me, though, that it took this pandemic for people to at least begin to vote with their wallet, right? Like, in the midst of all this, we've seen the FGC as a whole campaigning for you to say, hey, while this is going on, or for the extent of this summer, don't play that game with fucking delayed based netcode. Play Them's Fighting Herds, or play this other game. Play Last Blade 2.
Yeah.
Play the games that went through the trouble to give you this smooth connection.
Right.
And in doing that, has Capcom seen a huge drop-off? I don't really know. Has NetherRealm seen a huge drop-off? I don't really know. I don't even know what their netcode is like, right? But have these bigger games seen a big drop-off? I don't know. But they've seen something, and it's cool to see the community actually trying to enforce change.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just be mean about it on the internet.
Yeah.
So,
which has literally never accomplished anything.
Right. So I think that's cool, and I think it's cool to see games like Last Blade 2, soon to be Garo Mark of the Wolves, and Them's Fighting Herds getting play because of this situation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you know, I think also, like, I think that's also going to be good because I think that it's going to be educational to people too, and that, like, getting like I said before, Last Blade 2 is a 22-year-old video game, with like, and
that not a lot of people played.
Yeah, that not a lot of people played, and like I think it's a good entry point into SNK's fighting game library. And I think that, and I honestly, like, as a fan of SNK's games, I hope that it serves as like an entry point to some people to like try some of the other games, like go play.
I don't. No, Ryan. No.
Oh, you know. Oh, it's got to.
Let me tell you why.
Oh.
If you play Garo or Last Blade, and that's your first SNK fighting game,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to some of the others,
mm-hmm.
let me tell you something. It's downhill from there because you played their best fighting games right there.
So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go from Garo to Last Blade 2. Then you're gonna play Samurai Showdown 5 Special, and then you're gonna play Capcom versus. Is that Capcom versus SNK? Was that a Capcom game?
That's a Capcom game. SNK versus Capcom is the SNK game.
You're gonna play King of Fighters 1998. You're gonna play King of Fighters 2000. You're gonna play King of Fighters 2002, and then you're gonna stop.
Yeah, well, 13. You want to play 13.
Yeah, then you're gonna play King of Fighters 13.
Yeah.
Here 14's okay. Then you're gonna stop. And then you're probably gonna play.
Pretty sure 14 has auto combo.
Probably. But it's probably also got
delay based netcode.
Look, as long as Andy Bogart is there, then I'm happy, and he probably is.
Yeah, so, that old boy, he's there.
Yeah, that white ninja.
You know what I just bought today was KOF Neo Wave, which I haven't played yet, and I hear bad things about.
I feel like I feel like any game with the word Neo Wave in it is probably not very good.
Yeah, it looks cool
though. I remember all it took for me to get you to buy Samurai Showdown 6 was to tell you that it looked pretty cool and that a lady gets naked in it.
Yeah, and I bought it so we could play it together back when we were still having fighting game days.
Yeah.
And you you wasted my money.
I will pay you back the $2 you spent on that game. I promise.
Sure.
But yeah, fighting games could be better, and I think will get better.
I mean, I think they are getting better.
Yeah.
I just think it's taking way too long.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the progress is weirdly slow, and I don't understand it. But
look, to me, it's conceivable, especially with these big publishers, that their next game could have rollback netcode, a world tour mode,
Yeah.
fucking accolades at the end of matches,
Tournament mode.
better tournament mode, better punishment for rage quitters. Like, it's realistic that NetherRealms or Capcom or SNK or Bandai Namco could have all of that in their next game. I don't think that's unrealistic. But do I think it'll happen? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well, on that note.
Yeah.
uh, well, Tom, I I miss you, and
I miss you too.
we gotta play some. Well, I was thinking of because I think Last Blade 2 is like $8. Now, granted, the PS4 version does not have rollback, and even
Yet.
yeah, well, and then I did some reading, and the Steam version apparently the last time I read it, rollback was still in beta. So,
No, well, if it is still in beta, a lot of people have that beta.
okay,
Because I've watched gameplay of it.
okay, I'm
And
probably
it
still
looks
just.
nice.
I think I'm just gonna for simplicity's sake, and because that's where you have it, I think I'm just gonna get it on PlayStation. Uh, but yeah,
Do it.
that's gonna be some. It's gonna be some Last Blade happening this weekend, I think.
I'm going to use power.
Which one is that?
Well,
Oh yeah, there's
so,
power and then
or speed.
and speed. Yeah, I don't remember.
Speed gives you chain combos.
Yeah, I'm gonna be that sick mummy guy with the two blades. You know what I'm talking about? The one that's like he's twisted.
Anachorus.
No, not that guy.
Ermac.
Anachorus is cool though.
Ermac.
Put Anachorus in one of these games. Fuck it, man.
Yeah.
But all right, Tom. Well, I guess we're gonna end it here, huh?
Yeah, dude.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to us talk about fighting games again for the umpteenth time. I can promise you that this will not be the last time. So anyway, we'll see you guys later, and we'll be back with a regular episode next week.
Bye.